What's up, everybody? So we're back out in the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode we're working on the Farrier's Rasp build. So a reminder of what we're working on here is this knife that we got right here, little drop point recurve, kind of chopper-ish style knife. Now, today's episode we are focusing on making the handle scales for that knife. Now, we're going to be doing a few different pieces and combining them together to make some segmented scales. Now, in the last Shop Talk Tuesday, I was talking about my idea for the handle scale material that I was going to use, and I was planning on using the black G10 that we have right here and some diamond wood, which was layered wood that I have. And I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, this is going to look pretty cool. I think that's going to look awesome. But then I just happened to look past where my little green thing is right here, where I typically keep a lot of my real cool burls and all that. And I remembered that I had this piece, which was a cutoff that is the same thickness-ish of the G10 that we have here. And it has some of the best grain that, you know, that I have on pretty much any of these blocks. And I thought, that's perfect. I can go ahead, you know, cut that in half and then use that as the centerpiece in there. And I think that this will go really well with the theme of the knife, and it will stand out a lot in between the black that we have right here. So I think that's the route that I'm gonna go. And that way we get real cool design no matter where we're shaping these or anything like that. So this is the route that I'm gonna go on this, and I'm gonna show y'all. We're going to do the wood in the center, then we're gonna do a thinner vulcanized paper liner as a spacer, then we're gonna do the black G10, and we're gonna do that on both sides. So I'm gonna cut this in half, and on either side of the centerpiece it's gonna be a vulcanized spacer and then black G10, and that's gonna be the bulk of the scales. We're also gonna do the same color spacer that we do on here between the wood and the G10. We're gonna do that as a liner, and that's what we're going to adhere everything to make one whole piece of scale. So that is the goal for today. I'm going to break down this whole entire process and hopefully make it to where y'all are more comfortable with doing something like this for some of your future builds. So let's go ahead and let's get into this. So we've got everything that we're going to be using for this video kind of laid out right here. We've got our black G10. This is 1/4 inch thick black G10. Then we've got our piece that we're going to be putting in between the black G10 on here. I've got it marked out for the size that I want to be in there. And then we're going to end up cutting this out utilizing these two pieces right here. We've got our white liners and spacers all laid out right here. This is just real thin white G10, and you can score this with a razor and just snap it. So very easy to work with. These are going to be the liners that all of this stuff is going to be pressed onto, and then these are going to be the spacers that are going to go in between the wood and the G10 scale pieces. Now, I've already went through, measured this to be roughly where I want it on the handle. We are still going to need to square everything up after we cut it. So once we cut it and we get everything squared up, they're going to be a little bit smaller than what's going on right here. But I just needed to make sure I went small enough so that whenever this was on here, the pins have, they're going to be more centered in the black G10 area when it's all said and done. And for this particular knife, we're going to be using stainless steel 3/16 pins because it's going to go real well with the actual finish that's on the knife here. And I didn't want to do brass or anything like that because I wanted that stainless steel to stand out and match the knife, like I said. Now what we need to do is measure out the pieces of G10 that we need to cut out, and I've already got a rough idea of what I need. I need about an inch and a half, between an inch and a quarter, inch and a half on the actual square, and we're probably just going to do full-blown squares because I'm betting Yep, so these are 1.5 right here. So I'm just going to do 1.5 squares and we'll be perfectly fine. And I'm going to be using a scribe to actually mark that out. Now I will tell you, 1.5 on a, or utilizing a clear ruler with black lines does not make it super easy to figure out where we need to mark. So we mark the edge with the marker right there, and then we can actually scribe where that 1.5 is. So it's a lot easier for us to see on here where we need to go. So that covers 3 of them. So there is our 4 squares that we need for the handle. So we'll go ahead, cut this out on the porter band saw, same with this, and be able to start moving on to the next step. So one of the next things that we need to do is square everything up that we're about to glue together. We want to go ahead and square our platen to our work rest, just to make sure that whenever we're actually pressing everything up against the belt, that it is actually square and we're not creating angles on accident. So we're good right there. Then we put on our mask and then start squaring everything up. So one of the steps that I've done that makes this a little bit easier on me is once I get everything squared up how I want it, I'll go through and I'll mark on the sides. There's these little indicators here so that I know which way this is supposed to be oriented when it comes time to put everything together. So these sides match up, that matches up. That means that both of these are nice and square. So we've got that marked, and we have these marked right here. And you can't really match these up because they don't really match up well, so you'll know this goes to this one and these marks go to this one, so you don't get these all confused either. And I've got them marked with those little arrows so you know which part is supposed to be facing the scales here, because that is what's square together. So that's why we have it marked like that. Now one of the things that we need to do is go through and sand and rough a few things up. So now we want to go ahead and rough this up. I could use this side, but I don't want to. I want this side to be the part that actually sits against the scales, and I want these sides right here to be the part that's sticking out, because I like the particular grain where everything meets on these. You see it has all the dots and everything in here, as opposed to this big solid piece. I want both those to just match up how it's supposed to match up, so that's the reason why I like that. And I like all the dots more than just the big open area. So personal preference there. Oh, and this is just a piece of 100 grit sandpaper right here. Got all that shininess off there. Then we'll go ahead and do that with the sides that we have the arrows on for these. Now the arrows are still going to show up a little bit once I get done sanding, but if we need to remark them, we can. And again, all we're really trying to do is take the high gloss stuff off of here so that we have something to stick to with our epoxy. So now when it comes to the glue up part, I'm going to be using a piece of wood with some parchment paper on it. This is awesome. Whenever you epoxy, you can get epoxy all over this stuff. These scales will just pop right off of it because that epoxy will not stick to this parchment paper right here. Now, you can use parchment paper, wax paper, or whatever you want to use. What you need to make sure of is that if you're going to be using something like a 5-minute epoxy like I'm going to be, that you have everything laid out really close to where it needs to be. Got your clamps real close, you got all your pieces that you're going to put together really close, and you're mixing your epoxy really close so that you can get all this stuff put together and you're not risking getting to a point to where everything is starting to dry and it's not as movable or adjustable. So we're going to go ahead, get our epoxy mixed, then start getting everything put together. Now I get someone who mentions every once in a while, "Hey, you ruined a little, your something, whatever knife." This is just a palette knife that you would use for mixing paints. It's nothing super fancy. Costs like $6 at Hobby Lobby. I like using it to spread everything on here. So what we're going to start off with is we're going to spread it on our liner. You don't need to go too crazy with this. You just need to get a thin layer because we're going to be putting epoxy on everything. So you're just trying to coat it. So on these pieces, you want to make sure that you put epoxy where they're going to meet up, and that you're paying attention to where your little arrows are oriented. So that's going to go inside. Our spacer in here. You'll see why I cut them so tall here in a minute. Okay, now it's time to get everything pushed together and adjusted. Now I make these tall so that I can easily push them down and pay attention to my gapping between the liner and the spacer, because these will want to raise up. So once you get this stuff on here, it's going to be okay to move these around for a little bit. It's whenever that epoxy is just out in the air that it wants to actually dry up on you. But once you got these things on here, you can actually shift them around a little bit and that epoxy won't be messing with you. Now I'll use these clamps right here for the centerpiece to get it locked in place, and then I'll move everything around that piece. There we go. Get those shifted down. Try and pay attention to where your side pieces are so that they're actually pushed up against and kind of in line. You know, the reason why I cut everything oversized is so that I don't have to worry about where everything is going to sit. I can have a little room to fudge it around whenever I oversize everything. If for some reason I didn't line everything up perfectly. Now it's time to go ahead and clean everything up and make ourselves some scales. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap up this Shop Talk Tuesday right here. Now, we've got our scales made. We got them right here. Everything put together. Everything's nice and even and square. Do these look like a set that you would have got off of like Amazon or from a knife supply store that are super flat and super square? No, they don't, but they don't need to be. The points on these that need to be really flat are the insides here, where that's going to be marrying up to the tang. Those are the important ones. The outside, this doesn't have to look super pretty because most of this is going to get ground off anyways. The goal is make it to where it's flat, but it doesn't have to be super even or anything like that. The things that you need to focus on is where the liner is, where this is going to meet up to the actual tang, and making sure that these lines right here where the spacers are nice and straight, so that whenever you go and you start putting these on the handle or on the tang itself, everything lines up whenever you're looking around the knife. That's the goal. One of the things that I do every single time I make a set of scales is I put a piece of tape on one side. It makes it kind of like a book spine type deal, to where you can easily open them up, do whatever you got to do, move them around, look at everything, inspect everything, but they stay together and they stay true to where, like I said, these spacers are right there. But that is where we're going to end with this one. Now, in the next episode, we're going to go ahead and attach these and shape these so that we have our handle actually done on the knife. So that is going to be next week's Shop Talk Tuesday, is attaching and shaping the handle scales for this Farrier's rasp knife. So that's something to be looking forward to. I know y'all love it whenever I do the whole attaching and handle shaping, so that typically is the peak to most of my knife builds is whenever y'all get to see that process. But that's what we have going for the next one. One of the things that I wanted to show y'all that I got today, just a little random thing, got my hammer that I had ordered from Fire Creek Forge. These are some of the ones that he was making. This is a beefy beast. It's a rounding hammer, with a really big flat head, really big rounding head. I'm excited about working with this. I actually like the length of the handle. Even on my main rounding one that I use, the 2 1/4 pound one, it is probably about this much longer, but I choke up on it most of the time, and I use it about right here, just have the extra handle. So I'm excited to try this out. I've got a whole bunch of forging projects that are going to be coming up, so this is going to get really put to use, and I'll tell you what I think about it while I'm using it. But you know, Elijah from Fire Creek Forge, thank you. I'm excited about this, trying it out, seeing how it goes. This was one that I paid for, so it wasn't sent to me for free or anything like that. I saw that he was making his hammers, and I wanted to scoop one up. I really like the thought process behind how he made them, and I'm excited about that. If y'all want to check out stuff like this from him, I'm going to leave a link for his channel in the description below. I know a lot of y'all are probably already subscribed to him, but if you're not, go check him out. Guys, that is the end of this one. If y'all would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video or one of my other videos. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank y'all for coming by. Thank y'all for spending your time with me. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time.